안녕하세요. You've just seen a scene from Theatre Amoeba's latest project called the Jikji Theatre Project. Amoeba. Amoeba brings me to many different places, like here in Cheongju. And Cheongju is famous for being a green city, but it is most famous for one thing, which is Jikji. What is the Jikji? The Jikji is the oldest extant book made with metal movable type, printed in Cheongju in 1377. 78 years older than Gutenberg's Bible. This is important. The Jikji is not in Korea. It's in the National Library of France. Although an ancient Korean Buddhist text, France claims ownership. This is also really, really important. When you're in Cheongju, it's difficult to walk down the street and not see the word Jikji. Jikji, Jikji, Jikji. Jikji are everywhere. We're surrounded by them. Recently, I decided to try to count how many Jikji I would see in a typical day. So I even bought this counter. I walked outside and I ran up the mountain. 10 Jikji. I walked along the mountain, there was a silver fence. 5 more Jikji. I headed into the city. I walked past a bus stop. Jikji. I got on the bus. 3 more Jikji. And I got off the bus. And I continued to walk. Jikji, 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 Jikji. Jikji, 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 Jikji. Anyway, you get the picture, right? There are a lot of Jikji around Cheongju. But I never really saw them, never really saw the word Jikji at all. It was invisible to me. Many people ask me why I want to tell a story of a woman named Dr. Park Byun-sun. And I always come up with the same answer in my body. Some stories are invisible all around us, and some stories choose you. I met Dr. Park Byun-sun the day after she died, in November 2011. I decided to go to the Cheongju Early Printing Museum, and I walked inside the museum. And inside the museum, I followed a trail of flowers around a corner, around another corner, until I arrived at a display. And at this display, it read, Dr. Byung-sun Park, for those of us who are English speakers. And I learned 2 things. First of all, about her education. And second of all, she dedicated her whole life to binding texts that had left Korea and gone onward to France. That she had been the woman who proved that the Jikji was printed with metal movable type. Wow. I was intrigued. I leaned my head just up against the glass. And I breathed and I smelled those flowers. And I was taken away. I could see her old notes, her glasses. I could see things peeking out at me, memories of hers from the past. And it was at that moment I knew this story chose me. And as I breathed and as I felt her around me, stories started to appear. They started to jump into my mind. And I jumped on the internet and began to research. And as I researched, I discovered many things. She was the first Korean woman to study in France. After some years, she began to work at the National Library of France. And the more I found out, the more I wanted to know these stories. I started to imagine her in the basement of a windowless library, buried upon books covered in blue. And I began to think, what did this woman, what kind of courage did she have in order to accomplish this? The more I read about her, the more I discovered characters came to life. There were people shouting at her, liar, thief. Who was she? I wanted to know. And so I let that character come alive. Stories that choose you, they push you, they pull you, they take you in many different directions. They demand that you ask questions. Dr. Park was like this for me. The Jikji, as we know and read earlier, has a big importance to Cheongju, to Korea, but also to the world, as it could have been the start of the information age. And as I learned more and more about her involvement with Jikji, I knew I had to know more. 1967, and no one cared. Not Korea, not France, not the world. But did that stop her? No. She took her research into her own apartment, and she began to rebuild the actual movable metal type. Now, imagine this for one moment. She nearly started her apartment on fire 3 times. Dr. Park Man-sun had so much courage and perseverance. Her story chose us. I started the Jikji Theater Project with her story in mind, and this story has continued. So far, we've had over 30 participants from 6 different countries, including Korea, and we have become physical researchers because science and theater, they are so connected. Theater is about curiosity and discoveries. So is research, about making questions, about hopefully finding an answer. As we do this research, we find Dr. Park. So let's have another look at another scene from some of our work in progress.
주세요.
안 됩니다.
씹.
안 돼, 이거 오라고. 안 됩니다.
Get out.
스프.
주세요.
안 됩니다. 당신은 해야 당신한테
호랑이를 잡으려면 호랑이 물에 들어가야 된다.
The more we move our research, the more we find that this story has chosen us. And you may find that this story has chosen you, or you may find that another story has chosen you. But let's just agree on one thing. When you see something that is a story, when it calls out to you, when it pushes or pulls you, that you look at it, that you take it, that you put it in your pocket and you tell someone. Because the world is full of invisible stories. Nowadays, when I walk around Cheongju and I stroll down the streets, counting the Jikji, I see a woman, I see a researcher, I see a hero, I see a fighter, I see Dr. Park Byung-sun. 감사합니다.